Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take the sources you send us, dig in, and really try to pull out the core ideas together.
Exactly. And today we're looking at something pretty classic excerpts from chapter summaries covering the beginning of J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye.
Right, Catcher in a Rye. A big one. We should probably remind ourselves it's a Bildungsroman, right? That coming-of-age story type.
That's the one.
Hmm.
Published back in July 1951, though some bits were short stories before that. And it really throws you into the head of Holden Caulfield, this very cynical, very distinctive teenage voice.
Okay, so our mission here, using these summaries, what are we trying to figure out? We want to get the foundations right. What makes Holden tick in these first few chapters? What are the early conflicts Salinger sets up?
Yeah, exactly. What's the baseline for Holden? In chapters 1 and 2, they drop us right in. He's narrating from some kind of rest home, already hinting at a breakdown, something happening around Christmas after he left Pensy Prep.
Left Pensy Prep. Well, got kicked out, didn't he? Failing almost everything.
Pretty much. Failed 4 out of 5, only passed English. So yeah, he was forbidden to return. It sets up that outsider feeling immediately.
And he's pretty down on his brother, DB, too. The whole Hollywood thing.
Oh yeah, big time. He sees it as selling out, being a phony, which, straight away tells you something about Holden's values or what he claims his values are.
So we see him on Thompson Hill, kind of detached from the big football game.
Hmm.
But there's also that memory, isn't there? Throwing the football around.
Right. That's a great point. It's not all just contempt for Pensy. There's this little flicker of fondness or maybe nostalgia. It complicates things. He remembers throwing the ball with guys even after dark.
It shows he's not just a caricature of angst. There's more going on.
Definitely. Then there's a visit to Mr. Spencer, his history teacher, who's sick.
Ugh, yeah. The whole life is a game lecture. And Spencer reminds him he flunked him, reads that awful essay about the Egyptians. It sounds excruciating.
It really does. Holden describes the sick room, Spencer's bathrobe, the Vic's nose drops. It's all very unvarnished and unpleasant in his telling.
But, I mean, he did go visit him, right? Even after failing. And he notes Mrs. Spencer was kind.
Exactly. That's key. It suggests his cynicism isn't just blanket negativity. It seems more aimed at what he sees as hypocrisy or ugliness that betrays some kind of ideal, like the reality of the sick room and Spencer's, hairless legs. These things seem to offend his sense of what...
Innocence.
Yeah, maybe innocence
Mm.
or authenticity. It feels like he thinks the world should be better, cleaner, more honest than it is. And he gets angry when it's not.
And that links into that bigger theme the summaries mention the book being about innocence betrayed by the modern world by phoniness.
Okay, but we also have to remember he's telling the story, right? He's an unreliable narrator.
It's hugely unreliable.
Yeah.
We're getting everything filtered through this very specific, very adolescent perspective, his language, his grammar. It's all Holden.
So when he describes Spencer, maybe Spencer's trying to help, but Holden just sees him as picking on him, quite possibly. Holden characterizes him as almost vindictive, but Spencer's actions could just be, a concerned teacher trying to give some advice, however clumsily. We, the readers, or listeners in this case, have to constantly gauge that gap.
Okay, so that's the initial setup. Cynicism, hints of idealism, unreliability. Then chapters 3 and 4 shift more to his peers.
Right. We're in his dorm, Ossenberger Hall, great detail, named after an undertaker who made his money from discount funerals.
Yeah.
Sets a mood, doesn't it?
Definitely does. And Holden's there, reading Out of Africa, wearing his new red hunting hat. Indoors.
Which is interesting in itself. Then Ackley shows up.
Ackley, yeah. The summaries paint a pretty vivid picture. Annoying, bad hygiene, barges in, cuts his nails all over the place.
Squeezes pimples, yeah. Holden lays it on thick. And then you get Stradlater, the roommate. Handsome, popular.
But Holden calls him a secret slob.
Exactly. That contrast again, outward appearance versus inner reality. Stradlater looks great, but apparently his razor is rusty and gross. It's all part of Holden's phony detection system.
And this is where Jane Gallagher comes in. Stradlater has a date with her.
Yep. And he asks Holden to write his English composition for him because he's going out with her. Jane Gallagher, who Holden clearly has strong feelings about.
He remembers that specific detail, doesn't he? How she played checkers, keeping her kings in the back row.
It's such a specific, intimate memory. It shows he really sees her or remembers seeing her in a way that feels genuine, which makes his reaction to Stradlater dating her even stronger.
He's worried, right? Because Stradlater is more experienced sexually.
Yeah, Holden calls him sexy, and not in a good way. He's clearly anxious about what Stradlater might do, what his intentions are. But interestingly, Holden thinks about going down to say hello to Jane, but then He doesn't.
Avoidance again. And Stradlater borrows his jacket, too. His houndstooth jacket.
Yeah, adding insult to injury, maybe? Holden's left stewing, thinking about Jane and Stradlater, and then Ackley comes back in to annoy him some more. It's a lot of pressure building up.
So, connecting this back, the phoniness thing is huge here. Stradlater's surface charm, Ackley's maybe defensive obnoxiousness.
And Holden's own brother, DB, fits the phony category for him too, remember. It's a wide net. But notice, despite despising Stradlater in many ways, Holden does agree to write the composition.
That's true. Why do you think he does that?
Maybe basic kindness, obligation. Maybe he wants some connection, even if it's complicated. It shows he's not purely oppositional. There's that inconsistency again.
And the whole Jane situation really ramps up the tension around, well, adolescent sexuality. Holden seems quite protective of her innocence, or his idea of it.
Absolutely. And again, narrator bias is key. Holden makes Ackley and Stradlater sound pretty awful. He picks on Ackley's superficial habits, maybe because it's easier than dealing with Ackley's or his own loneliness.
The summaries suggest Ackley is maybe insecure too.
Yeah, it hints at that. Both Holden and Ackley are sort of isolated, not at the game. Ackley's annoying habits could be a shield, pushing people away before they can reject him.
And the red hat. He wears it inside, alone, like a private symbol.
Seems like it. That rebellious, maybe protective, something that's uniquely his that he can put on or take off.
Okay, moving on. Chapters 5 and 6. There's a steak dinner, a snowball fight.
Yeah, a little bit of just stuff happening. He hangs out with Malbroussard and Ackley. They go see a movie they've apparently already seen. It's kind of aimless.
Feels very teenage. Then back at Pensy, Ackley's bragging, maybe lying about sex. And Holden sits down to write that composition for Stradlater.
And this is huge. Instead of writing about a room or a house, like Stradlater suggested, Holden writes about his little brother Allie's baseball glove.
The one with the poems written on it, in green ink.
Yeah, this is probably the most significant piece of backstory we get.
Yeah.
We learn Allie died of leukemia a few years back.
Huh.
Holden absolutely idolized him.
Idealized him as intelligent, innocent, nice, red hair. The glove is like this perfect symbol of Allie's uniqueness.
And Holden's description of his own reaction to Allie's death. It's brief, but devastating. Sleeping in the garage, breaking all the windows with his bare hand. He physically couldn't even go to the funeral because his hand was broken.
Wow. Yeah, that explains a lot, doesn't it? That level of grief and trauma just simmering underneath.
Absolutely. It recontextualizes so much of his cynicism and anger. And then Stradlater comes back.
And he doesn't like the composition, says it's about the wrong thing.
Right. He wanted a description of a room or something, and Holden wrote this deeply personal thing about a baseball glove. Stradlater gets annoyed, tears it up.
Which must have felt like tearing up a piece of Allie for Holden.
You have to think so. And then the tension over Jane boils over. Holden keeps asking what happened on the date. Stradlater gets cagey, maybe taunts him a bit.
And Holden snaps. He throws a punch.
Yeah, though it doesn't go well for him. Stradlater pins him down easily, punches him, gives him a bloody nose.
And Stradlater's main concern is getting in trouble.
Seems like it. Not Holden's feelings, not the composition, just whether he'll get caught. Which just confirms Holden's view of him as a phony.
Right. Holden insults him some more. Stradlater leaves, and Holden, face all bloody, goes looking for Ackley.
Which is kind of touching.
Yeah.
In a strange way. After being so annoyed by him earlier, now he seeks him out. It shows how desperate he is for, I don't know, connection. Witness, comfort even.
It really highlights the pressure cooker situation. No privacy, criticism of something deeply personal about Allie, the Jane stuff. His world feels like it's closing in.
Definitely. His environment is mirroring his internal state, which leads us to chapters 7, 8, and 9, leaving Pensy.
Yeah, he's in Ackley's room, can't sleep, keeps imagining Jane and Stradlater. Then he asks Ackley that weird question about joining a monastery.
About being Catholic. Yeah, it's such a Holden question. Searching for some kind of escape, some extreme solution. But he gets annoyed with Ackley again. Decides he's had enough of Pensy and all the phonies.
So he just leaves at night instead of waiting until Wednesday.
Impulsively. Packs his bags, puts on the red hunting hat again, very deliberately cries a little, then yells, "Sleep tight, ya morons!" down the corridor. And just goes.
Quite a dramatic exit, a real breaking point.
Totally. And then the train journey to New York, he meets the mother of this guy, Ernest Morrow.
Oh, the lying starts big time here, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. He tells her Ernest is this super popular, sensitive guy who should have been class president. When, according to Holden, Ernest is actually awful. And Holden gives her a fake name, Rudolf Schmidt, the janitor's name.
And the reason he's leaving Pensy early? A brain tumor
A
operation.
tiny little brain tumor, yes. It's compulsive lying almost, creating this whole other reality to avoid dealing with his own messy one.
So he gets to Penn Station in New York, and he thinks about calling people.
But he doesn't. DB's in Hollywood. His sister Phoebe's probably asleep. He says he doesn't feel like calling Jane, which probably means he's too scared or mixed up. And Sally Hayes, his mother, apparently hates him.
So he's completely alone, in the middle of the night, in New York City.
Utterly alone. He gets a cab to the Edmond Hotel, this kind of shabby place, and he asks the cab driver that question about the ducks.
Where did the ducks in the Central Park Lagoon go in winter?
Yeah. It's this strange, almost childlike question amidst all his adult problems, maybe searching for some simple answer, some stability.
Then at the hotel, he sees some weird stuff out his window.
A guy dressing up in women's clothing, a couple spitting drinks on each other. He calls them perverts, but it also seems to arouse him.
Which leads him to call Faith Cavendish.
Right. This girl he got the number for, supposedly easy, tries to set up a date right then and there. She turns him down, says she needs her beauty sleep, offers tomorrow, but he declines.
It's just reaching out desperately, isn't it, for any kind of contact?
Absolutely. The analysis points out his breakdown isn't announced. It's shown through this frantic loneliness, the constant lying, the impulsive, sometimes contradictory behavior.
Like wanting to call Jane but being too nervous, saying he doesn't feel like it, is classic Holden deflection.
Totally. And the lying, especially the sheer scale of it with Mrs. Morrow, shows how unbalanced he's becoming. It's a way to deflect, to hide himself.
And his reaction to the hotel guests. It shows his complicated feelings about sex, right? He's curious, maybe aroused, but also kind of judgmental about it if it seems cheap or uncaring.
Yeah, he seems to think sex should mean something, involve genuine connection maybe. Casual or crummy stuff bothers him, even while he seems drawn to exploring it. He's really wrestling with these adult themes.
And through it all, he rarely says, I feel sad or I feel scared. We just see it in what he does and how he describes things.
Exactly. The narration is the revelation, even when he's trying to hide.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this initial dive up. What are the absolute key takeaways from this first, say, 9 chapters based on these summaries?
Well, first you've got Holden's core personality established, that deep cynicism layered over a kind of wounded idealism. He wants the world to be better than it is.
And his obsession with phoniness, that's central. Hypocrisy drives him nuts.
Absolutely. Then critically, the impact of Allie's death. It's not just mentioned, it feels like the foundational trauma shaping his entire outlook.
We see his intense loneliness and isolation even when he's around people like Ackley or Stradlater. He can't seem to connect authentically.
Right, and related to that, his anxieties about growing up, particularly around sexuality and intimacy. He's confused and conflicted.
And we absolutely have to keep in mind he is an unreliable narrator. His view isn't the objective truth.
Crucial point. Plus, the red hat emerges as this recurring symbol: rebellion, protection, individuality, hiding. It's doing a lot of work already.
So basically, these chapters show us a teenager in crisis, right on the edge, struggling with grief, identity, and the transition into a world he sees as deeply flawed.
Precisely. It sets the stage perfectly for his chaotic journey through New York. Everything that happens next stems from this foundation of hurt, confusion, and desperate searching laid out right here at the start.
So, a final thought for you listening. As we've seen Holden establish here his pain, his defenses, his warped perceptions, how does this initial portrait make you think about his quest for connection and meaning in the city? What trajectory does this madman stuff, as he calls it, seem likely to take based on these first crucial chapters? Something to definitely mull over. Thanks for digging into this with us.